Hello, I'm Tracy, and welcome to this program on time management. There's probably no skill that's more closely correlated with success and achievement in every part of your life than the ability to manage your time well. It'll bring you to the attention of your superiors faster. It'll help you to get more done in a shorter period of time. It'll make you feel better about yourself. It'll lead to faster promotions, higher status, greater pay, and everything. And in the time that we have together, I'm going to share with you some of the methods, techniques, and ideas used by the most superior time managers, men and women in every area of endeavor in America. Time management is essential to your health as well. Not just your productivity, but you only feel good about yourself to the degree to which you feel you're in control of your time and your life. In fact, the major reason for stress in America is a feeling of being out of control, a feeling of having too much to do and too little time to do it in. In this program, you're going to learn how to gain at least 2 hours per day. You may be able to increase your time management effectiveness by 50% or even double your output. So one of the most important things that you think about, and we'll come back to this in a few minutes, is what would you do if you could increase your output by 25 or 50% per day? What would it mean to you if you could double your productivity, which you can if you just use these techniques over and over again? Well, there's 4 requirements for you to make these techniques work for you. We call these the 4 Ds. The first D is desire. It's want. You must have a burning desire to be effective at time management. The second D is decision. You must make a decision that you are going to become an expert in this subject. You are going to take this course, you're going to use these materials, you're going to practice them over and over again, because what we have found is in the absence of a decision, nothing ever happens. You need a clear, unequivocal, do-or-die, burn-the-bridges decision that this is a subject that you are going to master. The third D is discipline. You must discipline yourself to practice and repeat over and over again good time management techniques. In fact, we say that time management is self-discipline in action, and the ability to discipline yourself more than anything else is going to determine your success in life. And the fourth D, to become excellent in time management, is determination. You must have the ability to persist. You must have the determination to keep on keeping at it, long enough until you become very, very good in this field. But I promise you this, the payoff is tremendous, because you see, time management is really life management. Everything that you do to improve the quality of your time management will improve and enhance every part of your life. You can even say it this way: the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your time management. The quality of your life will be determined by the way you use your time minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, because your time is your life. So let's talk about a psychology of time management. How do we change our mindset in such a way that we become really, really effective at managing our time? Well, we start off with this very simple fact, is that your beliefs equal your realities. The way that you manage your time now, in fact, every single part of your life is determined by your beliefs about that part of your life. If you believe that you are an excellent time manager, that you are effective and efficient and productive and a high achiever, then you will be. However, most people have funny beliefs about time management. Sometimes they believe they're good at it when they're not, but mostly they believe that if you manage your time too well, you are not as spontaneous or as natural as normal. The fact of the matter is, the better you manage your time, the more you can be completely spontaneous and free. So the starting point of a psychology of time management is, number 1, is to recognize that your time equals your money, and your time and money equals your life. That when we're talking about here is life management, but we're also talking about money management. You notice that you can exchange time for money, and you can also pay money in order to buy time. But both time and money combined equal life or happiness. When we talk about time management, what we're talking about is having enough time so that we can be happier in every aspect of our life. We can be happier at our work, we can have more time for our relationships, more time for our health, more time for personal and professional development, more time for emotional and spiritual growth, and so on. So therefore, when you begin to look upon time, when your belief begins to shift so that you see time as the fundamental resource of life, then your attitude toward the way you use your time begins to change. Now, the second key in the psychology of time management is your self-image. Now, what do we know about self-image? We know that the way you see yourself, your inner mirror, determines your external performance. The way you see yourself, and we have a phenomenon called self-image modification. What does that mean? It means that if you continue to see yourself and think of yourself as an excellent time manager, your external performance begins to change and you begin to use your time more effectively. How do you change your self-image? Well, one of the ways is by questioning and changing your self-ideal. You see, our self-image is largely formed by the people that we admire and look up to, whether we know them personally or read about them or something else. So a good question is, in terms of time management, who do you most admire and respect? Who would you most like to be like? Who do you feel is really well organized and very productive and gets a lot done? What you do is you begin using that person as your ideal and patterning your behavior after the most effective time manager that you know, and surprise, surprise, your own time management starts to get better. And this brings us to the most important part of the human psyche, which is your self-esteem. Now, your self-esteem has been defined many ways, but your self-esteem is largely how much you like yourself, how much you respect yourself, how much you value yourself. And what we've determined is that underlying self-esteem is what is called self-efficacy. Self-efficacy means that you like yourself to the degree to which you feel you are effective at performing what's important to you. So every single act of time management where you feel more effective and more capable and more competent causes your self-esteem to go up. It causes you to like yourself more and makes you more effective, better, more personable, more relaxed, happier in every part of your life. So, again, the fourth key in the psychology of time management is to see yourself as a poor time manager. To start off with and say, imagine for right now that I am a poor time manager, that I'm not particularly good. And the reason for this is simply this. Many people, if they are convinced they already know something, make no effort to learn it. But if they're convinced that they don't know it and that there's an enormous amount to learn, they become hungry for knowledge. So imagine that you don't know very much about time management. Don't make the mistake that the unconscious incompetent does. This is the person who does not know and does not know that they do not know. This is a person who falls into the intelligence trap of the low performer. They convince themselves that they don't need to learn anything and they can't be taught anything. This is the truly hopeless case. So imagine you're a terrible time manager and that everything you're about to learn is vitally important to your success and your promotion. Number 5 key in the psychology is look upon time management as a vehicle. Time management is a vehicle. It's a tool. It gets you from where you are now in your life to where you want to go in the future. Do you want to increase your income? Do you want to increase your level of performance and output? Do you want to increase the quality of your life, your position, your status? Time management is how you get there. Remember, time management is life management. It's the way you use your time in your life that will determine where you are now, where you'll be in a week, a month, a year, where you'll end up. So look upon it as a vehicle. Look upon it as a calculator or a computer that you can learn to operate in order to get yourself to where you want to go faster and more efficiently. Number 6 is imagine that you can gain 2 hours per day. 2 hours per day will translate into roughly 10 hours per week, and 10 hours per week will translate roughly into about 500 hours per annum. Ask yourself what you would do with a 25% increase in your productivity and performance. What would you do with the time? You see, what we know is the more you are clear about how you would use the time you would save, the more likely it is that you will engage in the activities that allow you to save the time. What would you do with a 25% increase in your time? Some people write books. Some people dramatically increase their performance and their output in their chosen career. Some people are more effective in other things that they do. So first of all, decide why you want the time, and the more you want the time, the more intense your desire to get that time, the more likely it is that you'll learn the skills. Number 7, the key to your rewards in life, both tangible and intangible, is the level of your service. You will always be paid in direct proportion to the value of your service to other people. So one of the very smartest things you can do is to always think in terms of how you can increase the value of your service. Because if you increase the value of your service, you'll increase everything else. Number 8 is to remember the difference between failures and successes is simply this, is that successes are more productive. They use their time well. Failures work the same number of hours and sometimes even more hours, but you know what happens? Is they're not very productive. They work at low-value tasks. They get very little done. The fact of life is you'll always be paid for what you produce. If you want to earn more, achieve more, you must produce more. You must concentrate on what successful people do, which is producing things that are better and more valuable than others. Number 9 is what is called the factory model. Now, the factory model simply says that a factory has 3 parts. It has inputs, it has activities, and it has outputs. And your job is to produce outputs. You will always be paid for the quality plus the quantity of your outputs. And one of the most important questions to ask yourself all the time is, what outputs have I been hired to accomplish? The great majority of people get tied up in activities, and they spend all of their days engaging in activities, but they lose sight of the outputs. The most productive people in America are intensely focused on outputs. Number 10 is that the key to motivation, to feeling terrific about yourself, to having high energy, to having high self-esteem, to have a positive mental attitude, is achievement. It goes back to self-efficacy, but whenever you achieve something important, your motivation goes up. Now, what does this mean? It means working on low-value tasks, even if you complete them, gives you no bang for the buck. You only get motivation, you only get excitement and enthusiasm when you complete a high-value task. Think in terms of high value, because the psychological impact can be tremendous. Your most positive people are those who are producing and achieving at high levels. Remember that time management is a skill. It's a skill like anything else which is learnable. Just like you learned how to ride a bicycle or operate a computer or work a calculator or do mathematics, you can learn a time management skill by practice and repetition over and over again, and it'll serve you all the days of your life. By the way, one of the very best uses of time is to develop a skill that enables you to save time for months and even years. Number 12 is new habits of time management or anything else take about 21 days. So make the decision that you're not going to try to change the whole world, but as you go through this program, you're going to pick one time management habit at a time, and you're going to work on that until you have locked it in, and then another, and then another. So when you launch a new habit, launch strongly. Never allow exceptions. Keep at it over and over again until it's locked in, until you feel uncomfortable if you don't do it. Number 13 is to remember this, is that time management is your key to the future. It's your key to the future. Everything that you ever will be is determined by your ability to manage your time. Everything that you could ever want or dream of in life is going to be determined by how you utilize your time between now and there. Number 14, remember that time management, as we said before, is a discipline. Time management is a series of habits that require repetition and practice, and the ability to manage your time is a measure of self-control, self-mastery, self-discipline. It's a measure of your overall character. Every single act of self-discipline in managing your time better increases your ability to discipline yourself in every other area. Every single time management skill that you learn increases your ability to use other time management skills. But every laxity in discipline in time management causes your level of discipline in other areas to decrease simultaneously. It's very, very important. Number 15, there's a direct relationship between the amount of control that you feel that you have in your life and the amount of freedom that you feel that you have. We have what we call the law of control, which says that you feel positive about yourself to the degree to which you feel you're in control of your own life. And you feel negative about yourself to the degree to which you feel you are out of control. We say that you have the same sense of freedom. The more you feel in control, the freer you feel, and the more is your positive mental attitude. You feel more positive about yourself to the degree to which you feel you're in control, and you feel negative, you have a negative mental attitude to the degree to which you feel you're out of control. And time management gives you control. Number 16, remember the only time you'll ever have is now. Don't worry about the past. Discard past labels with regard to time management. Focus on today, this hour, this minute, and manage your time now, and the future will take care of itself. Number 17, remember the key to leadership is 2 things. The first is performance. The key to leadership is the ability to get the job done. And the second part of leadership is results. Intense result orientation. Number 18, we're getting to the end, is set a good example. Imagine yourself as a role model for others. One of the very best ways to teach yourself time management is to look upon yourself as a role model. And number 19, remember this: the greatest motivator for becoming good at time management is that there are high payoffs involved. High payoffs in terms of earning more money, feeling more satisfied, being happier, having higher levels of self-esteem, feeling terrific about yourself, coming to the attention of your superiors. When you become excellent in time management, your future is literally guaranteed. Your job is to become an expert at time management. And to become an expert at time management means that you have to become excellent at setting very clear goals and objectives for every area of your personal and especially your work life. In fact, your ability to set goals and clear objectives can increase your productivity by as much as 50%, literally overnight, by becoming far more clear about what it is you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. We always encourage people to ask, what am I trying to do? How am I trying to do it? What am I trying to do? How am I trying to do it? And as many as 80% of people working today are not really clear about the answers to those two questions. In fact, if you ask what the major source of stress is in the American workplace, interviewing thousands of workers, it's not knowing what's expected. Not knowing what's expected. So your ability to set very clear goals and objectives for your work is going to have more of an effect on what you produce than anything you can imagine. In fact, the very worst waste of time is to do very well what need not be done at all. So we talk about goals and objectives. We start off with what we call MBO, or management by objectives. Now, management by objectives means that you keep yourself on track by working consistently toward accomplishing very clear, specific objectives that are fundamental to your success in your work and in your personal life. We start off with personal MBO, and we encourage you to set goals in 3 critical areas of your life. The 3 critical areas are, first of all, you need goals in your personal areas, your personal and family. These are your reasons why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you working at what you're working? What's the purpose of your life? People who are the most productive in their work lives are perfectly clear about why they're doing what they do. Now, the second part of your goals, or the second type of goals, are what we call your career and your financial goals. And these are what we call the how. These are how you get from where you are to where you want to be. These are how you achieve what you want to accomplish. And the third type of goals that you have to set are your personal and professional development goals. These personal and professional development goals are the what. By learning the what, you learn how to do the how, and the how enables you to have the why. So when we talk about management by objectives, there are 4 keys to management by objective. For anything that you have to do, here's the 4. First is definition. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Be very clear, and be clear on paper. Number 2 is a clear measure. How are you going to know that you've accomplished it? If you're setting objectives with someone else, or someone else is setting objectives with you, be very adamant. If you take a job, say, what do I have to do in order to get a raise, in order to get paid more money? The third is a plan. How are you going to get from where you are to where you want to go? And the fourth is very simple. What is your schedule? What is your timeline? Every goal must be time-bounded. Now, this brings us back to what we call your major definite purpose. Your major definite purpose is your most important number 1 goal. So in setting your life and organizing your life to manage by objectives, we say, first of all, ask yourself, what would I want to be, have, or do in every area of my life if I had unlimited time, unlimited money, unlimited resources? Create for yourself a dream list. Write down everything that you would want to be or have or do in the next 5 or 10 or 15, 20 years, or in your whole life. Then take and go over that list and say, what one great thing would I dare to dream if I knew I could not fail? What one great thing would I want to accomplish if I knew I could not fail? And make that your major definite purpose. Once you have a clear sense of your objectives and your goals and what are most important, then you can sit down, begin to organize your life, and your productivity is going to go up dramatically. In fact, we say, if we take number 2, we say that the key to life is goal setting, because goal setting is the master skill. Goal setting is the master skill. Your ability to set goals and to make written plans for their accomplishment is more important to you than any other single skill. An average person with very clear goals and plans is going to supersede and do far better than a superior person who doesn't have them. My wife has a sure-shot camera. Now, a sure-shot camera is beautiful in that it is calibrated so that when you aim it at something, it focuses automatically. A friend of mine who's a professional photographer and wins international prizes has a $10,000 Hasselblad. Yet my wife can take better photographs than my friend all day, every day, if my friend is not allowed to do just one thing, and that is to focus. So you find that a person who can focus with average capabilities is far more effective than a person who cannot focus, who has superior capabilities. Your ability to write out your goals and make plans for their accomplishment is the master skill of success. Now, the third key is to ask this question: why are you on the payroll? With regard to your work, why are you on the payroll? Why? What have you been hired to accomplish? If you were to go to your boss, if you were to look at your job description, if you were to look at what you are expected to accomplish every single day, why are you on the payroll? It's the fundamental question of success in the world of work. Once you answer this question, another way of asking the same question is, what are your key result areas? You have been hired to achieve a variety of results. What are your key result areas? The ability to clearly establish key result areas is to look at all the things that you have to do and pick your number one key result area, your number two key result area, and so on, is the essence of high performance. So what are your key result areas? Why have you been hired? What are you on the payroll for? What can you and only you do that, if done really well, will make a real difference? Now, number 5 is, what are your core functions? Again, a part of managing by objectives and setting goals is to clearly define your core functions. Your core functions are the functions upon which everything else you do depends. If these are done extremely well, that everything else is secondary to it. For example, the core function of a salesperson may be seeing qualified prospects and making presentations. If the salesperson does that, then the sales, the orders, the implementation, the service, the revenues, everything else will take care of that. So ask yourself, what are my core functions? Because the natural tendency of most people is to focus on ancillary functions and become very busy, engaged in activities, and lose sight of their goals. Then one of the most common mistakes of mankind is to forget what you originally started out to do and get sidetracked into other things of lesser importance. Now, the 6th thing is to ask yourself, what are your output responsibilities? What are your output responsibilities? What does that mean? That means, what outputs has your personal factory been put on the payroll to produce? What are the outputs that are expected of you? There are 4 ways that you define an output. The first is that it is under your control. An output is something that you can do, that you don't need anybody else's permission for, but you control the job totally. If you don't do it, it's not done. A second way that you can define an output is that it becomes an input for someone else. Every output is a completed job. We call this a completed staff function. In other words, when it's done, it goes from you to someone else, and someone else has to use it as part of their work or their life. The output of a factory may be a finished product. The output of a lawyer may be a completed brief. The output of an accountant may be a financial statement, and so on. The third is that an output is measurable. An objective third party can tell whether or not it has been accomplished. Someone can come along and say, yes, it's done, or no, it hasn't been done. So how would you measure your output responsibilities? And number 4, critically important, your success or lack of success in your work and your career is determined by the quality and quantity of your outputs. So we are on the payroll in every case to produce outputs that are under our control, that are measurable, that become an input for someone else, and which determine our success. Remember, we are not on the payroll to perform activities, to socialize, to get along, but to get the job done and to produce the most important key result areas. Now, the next question that you have to ask, question number 7, is, who are your customers? You see, we are all in the business of customer satisfaction. Robert W. Service said that everybody makes their living by selling something to someone. So who are your customers? And who do you have to satisfy in order to be promoted? You see, your customers are the people who determine your success or failure in your career. Sam Walton was once asked by a journalist, Wasn't it nice to be at the top of your corporation and not to have to worry about pleasing anybody else? And you know what he said? He said, you're wrong. He said, I have to please my customers every single day. He said, and there comes one walking through the door right now. And he pointed to someone walking through the door of a Walmart store. He said, that's the person I work for. That's my boss. That's the customer, the satisfaction of whom determines everything that happens to me. Now, principle number 8 is what do we call a 6-step method of setting goals. And it's very, very simple, but it's simply this. Step number 1 is to write out all the goals you can think of. What are all the things that you want to do? Step number 2 is to set priorities. Of all these goals, which are most important? Step number 3 is to write out and create plans for accomplishing your most important goals. Step number 4 is to set priorities on your plans and activities. Step number 5 is to schedule your plans, decide what you're going to do and when, and step number 6 is to implement, is to get busy. Now, this seems very simple, but the very act of doing this can change your whole life and your whole career. Every single person needs a series of goals. You need 10-year goals. You need 5-year goals. You need 3-year goals. You need 1-year goals, and you need 6-month goals. You even need lifetime goals. You need goals that organize every part of your life. One of the great exercises in life is to write your own obituary and ask yourself where you want to be in 3, 5, 10 years, or what do you want to be read over your grave? What kind of a person do you want to become? Sometimes people say, well, I can't set goals like this because they're too big or they're too challenging or they're too impossible. But here's the question. Is what one great thing would you dare to dream if you knew you could not fail? There are no such thing as unrealistic goals, only unrealistic time frames. Now, number 10 is ask yourself, what are the obstacles that stand between you and your goals? What are the obstacles that stand between you and your goals? What is stopping you from getting from where you are to where you want to go? And what is the number 1 obstacle? What is the biggest single obstacle, and what could you do starting today to remove it? Number 11 is what people do you need to work with to achieve your goal? Whose cooperation do you require in order to accomplish your goal, and what's in it for them? Who are the most important people? The members of your family, the members of your company, the people you work with, your boss, and so on. But who are the people whose cooperation you require? And the 12th question is, what additional knowledge do you require in order to achieve your goal? What knowledge, what skills, what information, and what is the number 1 knowledge, skills, and information that you require in order to get from where you are to where you want to go? So this is it. Decide what you want. Decide the obstacle stopping you from getting it. Decide the people whose help you require. Decide the additional knowledge you need, and then schedule and implement. Number 13 is ask yourself, what is the limiting step between you and your goal? The limiting step also becomes a goal because this is what determines the speed at which you achieve your goal. This is the choke point. This is the critical factor that is the bottleneck between you and wherever it is you want to go. So what is your limiting step between where you are and where you want to be? Number 14 is the need for clarity. Now, here's an important point, is the more clear you are about your goals and objectives, the easier it is for you to accomplish them. The more clear you are about what you want, the more clear your mental pictures of reality, the more likely it is that you will move step by step from where you are to where you want to go. Clarity enables you to visualize. And we know that all really successful men and women are capable of seeing the goal clearly in their mind before they realize it. The more time that you spend writing out your goal or your objective and clearly describing it, especially describing what it will look like when it's complete, the more likely it is that you will achieve it. All of our exercises, our exercise of dreaming big dreams, writing down all your goals, going through and setting priorities on the goals, making plans, setting priorities on the plans, scheduling, implementing, and so on, are all part of helping you see with crystal clarity what you're trying to accomplish. Asking questions every single day. Why am I on the payroll? What have I been hired to accomplish? What are my key result areas? What are your key result areas? What have you been hired to accomplish? If you could only do one thing in your job each day, what one thing would make the greatest contribution to your company? If you could only make one contribution or perform in one area, performance in what one single area would contribute the most to your career? Number 15 is to dream big dreams. Dream big dreams. All men and women who are really successful have gotten into the habit of dreaming big dreams and then make them come true. Make them come true. You see, the dreamers are the movers and shakers. They're the lotus eaters. They're the men and women who have made everything happen. So have big dreams for yourself. Dream about becoming a big success. Dream about moving to the top of your field. Dream about being the very best. Dream about being excellent in your chosen field. And finally, the final point on goals is this, is to write and rewrite your goals every day. Every single day, write a clear statement of what it is you want to accomplish, where you want to go, what you want to do. If someone were to wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, what do you want to do with your life? What are your major goals? What's your major definite purpose? You should be able to tell them just like that. This is what I want to accomplish and when I want to accomplish it and how I'll measure it and how it will be done. So write and rewrite your goals every morning. Review those goals at the end of every day. Plan and organize your time every minute. And develop within yourself the goal-setting master skill of success. Once you have clear goals and priorities organized in order of importance, your ability to set priorities and to stick to those priorities is absolutely essential to your personal and professional effectiveness. In this session, we're going to talk about the key ideas and rules that you can use in order to set priorities and to get more done. Recently, in a study of 104 chief executive officers, they asked them what were the qualities that would be most likely to put a young person onto the fast track in his or her career. And the number one quality agreed to by more than 85% of the executives was the ability to set priorities, the ability to select the relevant from the irrelevant. And I've discussed this with thousands of managers over time, and you know what I found out is they all say the same thing. Their biggest source of frustration is people who are not working on the most important use of their time. So let's talk about some of the keys to setting priorities. Key number one is what is called the 80-20 rule. Now, everybody's heard about the 80-20 rule. It's called the Pareto principle. It was developed by an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto in 1895, and what he discovered is over a large enough number of samples that 20% of what you do accounts for 80% of your results. 20% of your customers account for 80% of your sales. 20% of your products account for 80% of your profits. 20% of your transactions require 80% of the time involved. So the 80-20 rule says to Pareto everything, is to always be looking at what you have to do and say, what are the 20% of the things that I do that are most important to my success, both in the short term and in the long term? Look at your whole company. Look at all of your activities. What are the 20% of the things that you do that give you the greatest bang for the buck? Now, the second key to setting priorities is to distinguish between the urgent and the important. Now, this is one of the most important of all concepts, and it simply says this, is that there are 4 different types of things that you do on a daily basis, and you can divide them into 4 quadrants. If you take these 4 quadrants, you find that there are things that are urgent and things that are not urgent, and there are things that are important and things that are not important. Now, the first quadrant is quadrant 1. These are the things that are both urgent and important. Telephones ringing, people coming in, mail, a temporary crisis, problems, interruptions, and so on. Most people spend most of the time working in the area of the urgent and apparently immediately important. The second quadrant are the things that are important but not urgent. The third area are the things that are urgent but not important. For instance, somebody calling you, but it's not a particularly important thing. And the fourth area are the things that are neither urgent nor important. What is it that the average person does and that you have to get free of? Well, they work in quadrant number 1 all the time because these are pressing. When they get caught up with quadrant number 1, they drop to quadrant number 3, and they do what is urgent but not important. If they get caught up with quadrant number 3, they relax and pay themselves off by doing things in quadrant number 4, things that are neither urgent nor important. However, it is in working more in quadrant 2, doing the things that are important to your career and to your life, but which are not particularly urgent, that you can increase your effectiveness dramatically. These are working on your personal and professional skills, spending time with your family, working on long-term reports, upgrading your abilities, and so on. The things that are important but not urgent are the most vital things to your long-term future. So a critical part of setting priorities is to ask yourself, what are the important things that I have to do but which are not urgent? Because remember this, important but not urgent will eventually be very urgent, and sometimes it will be too late. The third key to setting priorities is to ask yourself, what are your personal values? One of the things that we know is you always have to be working at goals that are congruent with your values. So when we talked about goals, we talked about what are your most important goals. With regard to values and priorities, you have to say, what is most important to me? What do I believe in? What do I stand for? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And you'll find that high performance comes when your goals and your values are congruent, and low performance comes when your goals and your values clash with each other, when you're working at something that is inconsistent with what is really important. And this brings us to number 4 key in priorities. What are your unique strengths? Again, when we look at the most effective men and women in our society, we find that every one of them has taken the time to think through what they are particularly good at. What are you particularly good at? What are the strengths and abilities that have led to your success in life to date? What is it that you do easier that comes difficult to other people? What are you especially good at doing? Leaders are those who deploy themselves carefully, and they only work in areas where they can employ their unique strengths to their highest levels of excellence and distinction. So question number 5 is, looking around you, what are you better at than other people? Of all the things you do, what are you better at? What are you really good at doing? Where do you make a significant contribution in your work? And where could you become better in order to make an even greater contribution to accelerate your career even faster? Now, number 6 is what we call your area of mastery. We have to ask yourself this: what is it that you can become really outstanding doing? One of the things we know is that high-performing men and women are very, very good at one or a few things, and they do more and more of those, and mastery, competence, leads to high productivity. What is a top priority with regard to the spending of your time? I'll tell you what it is. It's spending time becoming better at the things that are most important that you do. Spending time learning how to be really, really good at the critical things you do can lead to payoffs that are absolutely extraordinary. Remember, the top 1 or 2 or 3% earn 5 or 10 or 20 times the average because they're very, very good at a couple of things. So one of the ways that you set priorities, saying, what could I become really good at? Number 7 is ask, what are your high-value activities? What are your high-value activities? What are the things that you and only you do in your area of operation, your work, your responsibilities, that really contribute high payoff to your company? Your high-value activities are the answers to the question, why am I on the payroll? What have I been hired to accomplish? What are my key result areas? And here's an important point. Never give in to the temptation to do small things first. Never give in to the temptation to clear up little things when you still have valuable things to do. Number 8 is, how do you use the ABCDE system in order to dramatically increase your ability to produce? Well, the ABCDE system is taught in all time management courses and basically says this, is that your A jobs are your must jobs. There's serious negative consequences if you don't do these things. Your B tasks are your should jobs. They're important, but the negative consequences for doing them are not that serious. Your C jobs are the things that are nice to do. And we have a concept called completion by deletion. Completion by deletion means delete the things that are nice to do so you have more time to work on the A's and B's. The D tasks are the tasks that you delegate. And the E tasks are the tasks that you eliminate. Now, eliminating tasks is one of the fastest ways to increase your productivity. So you ask yourself, what are the things you can eliminate? What are the things you can delegate? What are the things you can delete? And you'll find that your A task will almost invariably be the 20% of things that will account for 80% of what you do. Number 9, and this is the key question in time management. Always ask yourself, what is the most valuable use of my time right now? What is the most valuable use of your time right now? Most important question in time management. It keeps you on track, keeps you working steadily in the direction of your highest capability to perform. Keep asking, what's the most valuable use of my time right now? Then do only that thing. This brings us to priority setting idea number 10 is do the right things rather than doing things right. As we've said before, the very worst thing in the world is to do very well what need not be done at all. And if it's not worth doing, it's not worth doing right. So do the right things. How do you do the right things? You go through this process and you keep asking yourself, what are the things that I must do? What are the things that have the greatest possible consequences? What are the things that account for the 80% of the value of the things that I do? And do the right things rather than the fun things, the easy things, the convenient things. Key number 11 to setting priorities is to do first things first. And stay with those things until they're complete. Do first things first. And stay with those things until they're complete. Do first things first and second things not at all. Now, the 12th key to setting priorities is the quality of courage. The quality of courage is the indispensable quality of leadership, and it means to have the courage to put off doing the things that are of low contribution and focus your mind, your time, your attention on doing the things that make the greatest contribution. It takes a lot of courage to set priorities and to stick to it. But each time you do, it develops the quality of courage. This leads us to number 13, which requires courage, and it is the establishment of posteriorities. You see, if you're going to set priorities, you also have to set posteriorities. The basic rule is this, is you can't start doing one thing unless you stop doing something else. What you have to do is you have to discard the past. You have to say, what are the things I'm going to stop doing? The people I'm going to stop associating with, the jobs I'm going to stop working on, and you have to establish them as posteriorities that may or may not have been relevant in the past, but which are not relevant to the future. They are not important in their consequences. Number 14 in setting priorities, always choose the future over the past. Always choose the future over the past. Always choose the opportunities of tomorrow rather than the problems of yesterday. Do you know that 80% of people spend their time working on solving the problems of yesterday or finding out who's to blame for them? When everything's go wrong, always ask yourself, where do we go from here? What is the future? What do we do tomorrow, the next day? How do we solve it? Keep yourself solution-oriented, future-oriented, rather than present and past-oriented. 15th key to priorities is to focus on opportunities. Ask yourself, since you're going to have to live the rest of your life in the future, what are the opportunities of tomorrow? What are the things that you can do today that will lead to great payoffs in the future, based on everything that you know? Think always in terms of future orientation. It's the hallmark of the superior thinker. Where do we go from here? What do we do from here? Now, number 16 is to consider the futurity of all present events. The futurity of all present events. Futurity simply asks the question, what is the positive potential future impact of what I'm doing? In one of the most longitudinal studies on success, what they found was that men and women who were very successful had what they called long-time perspective. They found that cross-culturally, throughout all social, economics, and racial groups, people who had the longest time perspective were always the men and women who accomplished the most. Now, what did this mean? It meant that everything that they did on a day-to-day basis, they asked themselves, how is this likely to affect me 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years out? And the longer the time perspective, the more likely it was that those people would move up socioeconomically. They also found that people who had short time perspective, people who were only thinking about how these things would affect them today, people, if you like, were always looking for the things that were fun and easy rather than the things that were long-term and required tremendous discipline and were hard but had long payoffs. The people who concentrated on the short term were always the least successful people. The people with the long time perspective were the most successful. Remember, success, by the way, is an attitude. And the critical attitude that you need to develop to be a great success in your life is to think in terms of the long term. Practice delayed gratification. Work hard today in order to enjoy the benefits tomorrow. And one of the ways of setting priorities is saying, what is the most important use of my time right now with regard to the long term, and then do that. Number 17, remember this, there's always enough time to do the important things. We say there's never enough time to do it right, but there's always enough time to do it over. The fact is there's always enough time to do the important things. A person says, I don't have enough time, is a person who has really not thought. So ask yourself this question. What would you do with your time if you only had 6 months to live? What would you do with your time if you only had 6 months to live? You would find that your mind would become wondrously clear, as Samuel Johnson said, and it would be very clear to you what is really, really important. An exercise we put our people through in our seminars, we say, what would you do if you only had 6 weeks to live, or 6 days or 6 hours or 60 minutes. You see, when you begin to really look at your life, you'll find that there's always enough time to do the important things, but the critical thinking skill is to look at your work and do what Thomas J. Watson said, founder of IBM, think. Think about your work before you begin. Think about your work before you begin. Now, number 18 is to always be upgrading and downgrading your posteriorities and your priorities. You see, something which was very, very important to do today or yesterday may not be important tomorrow. So always be asking yourself, what are my priorities today? What were they yesterday? What need I do more of? What need I do less of? We have a natural tendency to do what is fun and to do what is easy. We have a natural tendency to do what is small and irrelevant because it's enjoyable. But the key to success is to be upgrading some tasks and downgrading the others. And finally, number 19, a key question. We call it the 1-month question. With regard to your work, ask yourself every single day before you begin this simple question. And the question is, if you were called away for an entire month and you had to leave tomorrow, what one thing would you get done before you left? Once you've written that down and thought about it, then ask yourself, if you had just enough time to do one more thing, what would it be? And then write down that. And if you do this, you'll be working on your top priorities all. It's been said that action without thinking and planning is the cause of every failure. But the flip side of that is that action preceded by thinking and planning is the reason for every great success. Everything we've talked about up to now, preparing yourself mentally to be an excellent time manager, making the decision that that's what you're going to do, setting very clear goals and objectives and organizing them on the basis of priority, and then setting priorities and determining the activities you're going to engage in leads us to planning and organizing your time and your activities so that you can get the most done. And the starting point of time management is what is called the neatness habit. Now, the neatness habit simply says that you can as much as double your productivity by increasing your level of neatness. That neatness means that you clean your workplace so that it is spotless and that all you have in front of you is one specific task when you begin work. In fact, there have been lots of studies done on the subject of neatness, and over again we come back to the fact that neatness gives you self-esteem, it gives you a feeling of personal pride, it makes you look effective, it makes people see you as effective, it improves your self-image, and increases your output. So one of the questions you always want to ask yourself when you look at your workplace is, what kind of a person works at that workplace? If you look in your briefcase, you should ask yourself, what kind of a person owns that briefcase? Look at your car. What kind of a person drives that car? Because the things around you correspond exactly to the state of your mind. You know what we have found is that a cluttered desk equals a cluttered mind. A cluttered desk, a cluttered purse, a cluttered car equals a cluttered mind. So the starting point of planning and organizing is to get really neat. Neatness is the key. It's the core personal productivity habit. Now, sometimes people say, ho, ho, ho. They say, well, I know where everything is. Do you know what we have found? We have found that the person is spending so much of their mental capacity keeping what is lost organized and remembering where everything is that they don't have as much of their mental capacity available to do the work that they're paid for. And if they're productive working in a messy environment, think how much more productive they would be working in a neat environment. Now, here was the second point. Is in a recent study, 50 out of 52 senior executives said they would not promote a person with a messy desk or a messy work environment. They said that they would not even give that person important responsibilities because they would not trust the person to do the job well. In fact, the tendency to work in a messy work environment can actually sabotage your profession because it holds you back from getting the opportunities that you need to be really successful. So, here is a rule. The rule in personal neatness is when you're done, put it away. Whenever you're done with anything, put it away. I have worked with Swiss chefs who've been trained in the Swiss cooking school in Geneva, and one of the things that they do is before they cook, they bring out every single thing that they need, they use it, and they put every single thing away in sequence. when you work, you will find that good craftsmen, really effective and efficient people, do it and they put it away. We say to our children, complete your transactions. Whatever you start, finish and put it away. Our children, by the way, go to a school called Montessori. Montessori builds children so they come out with tremendous levels of self-esteem and self-confidence. And their key is this, is from the age of 3, they have them engage in tasks where they start it, do it, and put it away. Start it and do it and put it away. Now, each time you finish a task and put it away, do you know what you feel like? You feel like a winner. When you feel like a winner, it excites you and enthuses you and wants you to, and gets you wanting to do even more. So putting your tasks away is a powerful way to pump up your own self-esteem. The rule is, when you've completed it, do it away. Put it away. Number 4 is, whatever task you're working on, handle it only once. Handle it only once. This is one of the most powerful of time management tools. It means if you're going to pick up a piece of paper of any kind, do something with it. If you cannot act on the piece of paper or complete it, at least do something with it which moves it along one stage in the work process. Many studies show that the average executive picks up an important piece of paper as many as 5 times before he or she acts on it. Do you know what that means? It means that you increase the amount of time necessary to deal with a piece of paper by as much as 500% by simply avoiding dealing with it when you pick it up the first time. So here's a very simple, powerful system that's been developed with regard to papers, and it's called the TRAF system. The TRAF system has 4 letters, T-R-A-F. T stands for toss. Put it in the wastebasket. Tossing is one of the most powerful things that you can do. Ask yourself, what would happen if I couldn't find this piece of paper again? Do I really need this piece of paper? Does it need to be filed? Am I going to examine it or read it? Do you know what one of the biggest problems in the American workplace is today? It's called pile-itis. Pile-itis means we keep piling up things that we think that we're going to read or use sometime, and we never do. So use your wastebasket generously. Here's your basic rule. When in doubt, toss it out. Now, number 3 is refer. Refer it or delegate it to someone else. If it's not your job, or you can give it to someone else or pass it on to someone else, by all means pass it on to them rather than sitting and thinking about it yourself. Peter Drucker says that the average person has to delegate everything that is possible so that you'll have enough time to do the 1 or 2 things that make a big difference. The 3rd letter is A, is action. Now, if you're going to take action on it, have what is called an action file. An action file is, in my estimation, a red file. I use that. And these are things that you're going to work on, but perhaps you can't work on them now, so you move it along one step by putting it in your action file for work later. And the 4th step is file. Now, here's the critical rule. Only 80% of everything that is filed is never used again. It's never called for again, and it's never required again. So again, ask yourself, before you assign that and create work for someone else in filing something, by all means say, am I ever going to need this again? If we're not going to need it again, throw it away. Ask yourself another question. If we really needed this, it was a terrible emergency, could we get it back again? Could we call somebody? Could we pick it up? And if you could, throw it away. 80% of what you file will never be seen again. Now, number 6 in planning and organizing is preparation. Before you begin to work, have everything that you need. Have everything at hand. Again, look upon yourself as a craftsman or a craftswoman, and what you'll find is the very best workers prepare everything. They have their pens, their papers, their calculators, their details, their files. Everything they need is at hand so that they can sit down and they can work without getting up. Your poor workers, by the way, are always having to get up and get something and come back, and get up and get something and